Yeah, man. So if you guys remember, now me and Wa, we're friends with Frank Reich, and I don't know. I heard 13.5, and Howard's 10 times more plugged in. Angelo goes, so he comes on the show, he calls me, he goes, ask Howard what he meant by north of 10 million comfortably. Howard talks to everybody, but he has a cryptic way of putting those tweets out. Make sure you follow him over on his X account too. So let's bring him up here. The sly one himself, Mr. Philadelphia, Howard Eskin joins us now here. All right, Howard, that was pretty slick.
Well, does it make any difference how much money he makes?
Yes, it does, because it tells me the importance of how they see him in the building. If he's so important, you make him the highest paid guy in the sport.
No, you don't. No, you don't. Andy Reid is the best coach in football, and it's not even close. All right. He's the best coach. I don't know if he's the best coach ever, but he's certainly better than Belichick. And he's, you look at Bill Walsh, you got to go back away. You can't judge Vince Lombardi and those and then Tom Landry. But in the last 20 years, Andy Reid is the best coach in football. So if basing it on what you're trying to say is he should be making the most money, which apparently he is. But it doesn't matter to me what a coach makes. Everybody's overpaid in professional sports. So what's the difference? Nick Sirianni is now comfortable for the rest of his life. All right. And that's all it really matters. Does it make any difference? I mean, really, does it make, first of all, what am I, Charles Barkley? It's just, when you think about AJ Brown making 32 million, does he really need 32 million? And then the other guys, who was it, Justin Jefferson?
Howard, it's an ego thing. Every player wants
That's
to make
exactly
more.
Right.
But everybody wants to make more than his next guy everybody in our business, everybody in any business wants to be you're gauged by salaries. You're not gauged by how people think of you and pats on the back. They want to know, again, AJ Brown saw the guy, I'm not saying Brown get 30 some odd $1 million. And he's turning around going, wait a minute, what is that about? I've been here doing all this. And then they ended up extending him. It totally is ego. I'm not saying you're wrong, but I'm saying it's ego, and everyone has it in sports.
Well, yeah, but I don't think Nick Sirianni lives his life because of his ego, his success. Here was a guy that was really in the last two coaches standing before the Eagles made the decision of Nick Sirianni were Josh McDaniels. Was it Josh? I forget his name already because he's such a bad head coach. You know what I'm talking about. And Nick Sirianni. And the Eagles selected Nick Sirianni, and they made the absolute right choice. And then the geniuses, the morons, and the nitwits in Philadelphia, after 4 games, wanted to fire Sirianni for Belichick, which would have been a total disaster. I don't even know if he's in the top 5, Belichick, because without Tom Brady, Rodney Harrison told me one time, I said, Rodney, and I asked him a straight up honest question. Without Tom Brady, what do you think Belichick, and I called him Belichick to him because at the time I asked him, I probably didn't know he was cheating. But now we all know he was cheating. What do you think his record would have been without Tom Brady? Probably around 9-7. Is 9-7 the best coach in football? No. And without Tom Brady, he's won nothing. Nothing. Zero as a head coach. 0. So I don't even think he's in the top 5. But now he might have an ego. Andy Reid, I don't think Andy Reid has an ego, but, somewhere along the way, they just wanted to take care of him because he's that good, and they don't want him to retire, and he's not going to retire. But I don't know that he's driven by money. And there are some coaches that are probably driven by money. Nick Sirianni, from what I understand, is making right around $15 million a year.
Okay, that puts him right there with Tomlin and John Harbaugh. and that puts him in the conversation where you're talking top 5 guy. That's probably right. Howard, I do want to ask you one thing, though.
What do you mean probably right? Usually I am right.
No, excuse me, sir. Excuse me, King, you're right.
He's not making 19 million.
He's
not
15?
making.
So you think he's around 15?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. From what
Beautiful.
I understand.
Thank you. We will take that to the
Yeah,
bank.
I mean, it's just, but it doesn't matter to me what he makes because it doesn't affect the way the team can move forward because coaches aren't in a salary cap, players are, and you got to be careful with what you do with players because you got to do it differently. I don't know if Nick Sirianni got a signing bonus. It really doesn't matter. He's guaranteed, I believe, at least 3 years. But I would believe he probably got a 4-year contract.
Okay, with probably a team option, maybe on the 4th, like that, something like that.
Yeah, well, it's 3 or 4, but whatever he gets, it's probably guaranteed. But if he gets another job, now think about this. And Chip Kelly was great at this. Chip Kelly, bounced around, but when you go with another NFL team, it's whatever you're left
right
with.
Now in Washington is still making Bidwell money off that contract, Howard, that he signed a couple of years ago. That's why he didn't take any other opportunities, is because he signed a $9 million deal. And that's personally why Frank didn't take another opportunity for him to go and coach anywhere else except for the Stanford thing. By the way, Howard, he's going to be on the coaching staff next year, Frank Reich. He said it on the program here. And this is what was said to me, that they were carving a role out for him and they were making a role for him. He did not want to be the offensive coordinator. He wanted the dust to settle. And he was on a program here when he just got the Stanford job. And he said that Nick Sirianni and the organization was carving out a position for him. And I said, so you were going to be like a consultant? And he said, yes, we were defining the role. And Nick was defining the role. In my opinion, that sounds like he'll be here next year because it's only a 1-year deal that he signed to be the Stanford head football coach. And so I could see him being a consultant, and Nick confirmed it, or excuse me, Frank confirmed it that he was going to potentially join the staff next year. Do you got a problem with that?
Well, not at all. I think Frank Reich is a terrific coach. Obviously, when you're a head coach, it's not always about how good you are. It's the players you have and the team you're given. And Nick Sirianni always says terrific things about Frank Reich and how much he learned from Frank Reich. So that's important too. The fact that they see eye to, well, not see eye to, they're on the same page.
Yeah.
But the thing about coaches, somebody's going to move. Somebody's going to get another job. Something's going to happen. And there's always room for another coach. And just to have him on the staff, I think the Eagles offensive coordinator, Kevin Patullo, is a terrific coach. I really think he's going to be very good. But it comes down to the players, and it comes down to a team that doesn't get caught up in all this ego that they're Super Bowl champions and all the attention they've gotten in the offseason. But I think Kevin Patullo has done a great job, and he wouldn't want to, unless Kevin Patullo gets a head coaching job. And I don't know if he'd get it after 1 year, but you never know in the NFL because guys get fired all the time. So I would be happy. I am happy if Frank Reich is with the Eagles because he is a terrific coach. And the fact that he and the head coach are so aligned with each other really makes it important.
And the organization really likes him. I know the owner and the GM like him like that too. So, Howard, let me read you something here. And again, I don't know how you look at Pro Football Focus, but they said a year ago the Eagles, they got them ranked as the #1 roster in all of pro football heading into the 25 season. They ranked all 32. And I looked at it and said the biggest strength a year ago was the defense. Obviously, we'll get to the defense here, but here was the biggest weakness. This is what they said about the quarterback. Much of the burden falls on the quarterback, Jalen Hurts, who ranked 23rd among qualifiers and PFF passing grades despite an outstanding final 2 games. The biggest drop-off came in dropbacks where Hurts posted a 64-6 non-play action, which made him the 26th worst passer in all of pro football. In your opinion, when you read stuff like that, give me your assessment on how you see Jalen Hurts. Does that offense this year, 2025, run through Hurts, or does that run through Barkley?
Well, it obviously, I don't know if it runs through Barkley, but without Barkley, it's not the same because and let me just say this, I don't know that I always agree with Pro Football Focus,
Agreed.
but and there's a lot of people along those lines that don't always agree with Pro Football Focus. But I believe from what I had understood, they didn't want Jalen Hurts throwing more than 21 to 23 passes a game. Now, what that does is it cuts down it cuts down the turnovers or the chance for turnovers. And if Barkley wasn't as successful, Saquon Barkley wasn't as successful, then Jalen Hurts wouldn't be as successful. But let's also point out the offensive line is, I don't know where they rank them, but they're probably the best in the NFL. I would think they're
Howard. Phil Simms last week said it's the greatest O-line he's ever seen.
well, yeah, that says a lot. I mean, I don't know thinking about because I don't remember all the offensive lines, but there was been some really, really good ones. Usually when a running back is that successful, the offensive line has a lot to do with it. Now, once he gets to the second level, he's terrific.
Yeah.
But you got to have a really good offensive line to get to the second level. So without Barkley, Jalen Hurts is not thought of. Excuse me, I'm all choked up about this. I'm not thought of the same way and not viewed as the same quarterback. Listen, he's gotten much better. He's a very good quarterback, but without Saquon Barkley, he's not the same quarterback. But you could say that for a lot of people, a lot of quarterbacks. Now, Tom Brady was different, but the way they, I'm trying to think about the running backs they had, and they had some good ones, not great ones, but they had some good ones. And Russell Wilson was good, not because Russell Wilson was good, but because the defense gave him great field position so many times. The one of the years that they went to the Super Bowl,
Marshawn Lynch.
yeah, right, and they had Marshawn Lynch. One of the years that Seattle went to the Super Bowl in the red zone, and the Eagles were just okay. The Eagles and Seattle were in the low 20s. I mean, high 20, whatever. They were like 21 to 23. They were right there as the same, and Seattle went to the Super Bowl. So, it's sometimes it's a defense that gives you great field position. Sometimes it's the running back. Sometimes it's the offensive line. Football is probably more of a team sport than any other sport. You could see basketball is not a team sport. Basketball, whoever just fires up as many threes as they can, and if they hit them, but defensively, they might have to play as a team. But football is the best team sport, and you've got to have other elements. And I say this: the Eagles, I don't know if they would have not won, they would have lost the Super Bowl, but they wouldn't have won it the way they did if it wasn't for their defense holding Kansas City the way they did. The defense, I think the MVP of the Super Bowl had to be somebody on defense. That's just my thought. Even though they scored 40 some points, it had to be somebody on defense.
Yeah,
but
I mean, I agree. Do you think, Howard, that they've made too many moves on the other side of the ball, creating too many question marks? Because again, that was one of the greatest collections of versatile players I've ever seen. Did they have top end guys at every single position? They may not have, but what they did have was they had guys that you didn't have to take off the field, which meant less substitutions, which meant you could play in multiple bases. It was really one of the best. Was it Gang Green? No. But was it more versatile than Gang Green? Possibly. I mean, they made a lot of moves over there. And you heard Vic talking today a little bit. I mean, did they make too many moves?
I don't know that sometimes you have to. Teams that win, and I think even in the Super Bowl, the roster changes from 15 to 18 players because now other teams think these guys are really good and they're going to pay them a lot more money than the Eagles can pay them to kind of manage the cap. It happens. That's why Kansas City wasn't the best team in the AFC this year.
No.
I think Buffalo or Baltimore were better teams, but it finally caught up with them. Their offensive line was brutal, and that's why the Eagles were just all over Mahomes. But you can't maintain that level. The fact that they got to the third Super Bowl is a testament to the head coach, Andy Reid, the third straight Super Bowl. They're not going back to the Super Bowl this year.
No way.
As good as Mahomes is, they just don't have enough, and you got to kind of pick up the pieces after that. But that's what happens. You lose players when you win Super Bowls, and it just stands to reason they're going to take the money. Some players want to play with a winning team, and some players just want to go for the cash. And I guess you can't fault them for that. And the Eagles, when you win a Super Bowl, you can't pay everybody. They're going to miss some of those players, but they still have a good defensive line. I don't know if the ends, you got to figure out what they're going to do. But Nolan Smith, I know he's listed as a linebacker, but he's really a defensive lineman / linebacker. Right. So they won on defense because their pass rush was so good and they didn't have to blitz that much. So that is important. But, and Vic Fangio is a terrific coach, but the players got to play. Jalen Carter, Antone Davis have to play at a really good level. So
let me ask you this here. A couple last questions here for you, Howard. Boy, I'll tell you something. I don't know if this is an Eagle thing or I don't know if this is an NFL thing, because now all of a sudden the NFL commissioner's coming out and he's targeting the Eagles on, as he has worded it. I heard Andrew Brandt make the comment.
Yeah, I actually had Andrew Brandt on my podcast.
No, I heard it on your show.
Right.
I watched it, and I heard him say that he believes that the commissioner and what the commissioner's targeting is that those void years, they're manipulating the cap to their benefit, which means that they're going to try to close that. And they're going to try to make sure that you can't cut that Huff deal without voidable years being turned into signing bonus. You think the National Football League has an in for the Eagles right now?
I stopped whining. I know these Eagles fans that whine, they have it in for the Eagles. First of all, and you probably remember this, the tush push, let's start with that. The tush push was an illegal play, 15, 20 years ago.
Yes,
you weren't allowed to push a player who had the football from behind. Why they changed it, I don't know. So now somebody complained about it, that if it was illegal before, why? Hey, listen, I'd rather see them. I don't really care whether they have tush push. I like to see people play football.
Yeah.
So
you didn't like to play. You didn't like to play.
I didn't have a feeling one way or the other. I could care less whether it was ruled illegal, because I want to see teams play football. And if they're a good enough team, they'll be able to play football the way it was meant to be played. And just because you have a lot of guys pushing from behind, and really Landon Dickerson is really important in that play, and he's not pushing from behind, he's pushing from in front. But so everybody says, because a team brought that up. Well, 22 teams didn't want it. You needed 24 to vote against it. 22 teams didn't want it. So that's not the commissioner. That's 22 teams. So I really could care less whether they have the play or they don't have the play, whatever. And because what's going to happen. There's no suspense. There's no play action. There's no, pass run option from the one or one. It's just a simple play. And I want to see more to it. Now, as far as in the spirit of the rule, regardless of the spirit of the rule, the Eagles have found a way. And I'm sure other teams try the same thing, but they haven't made it as good. The decisions haven't been as good when other teams try it. And Jeffrey Lurie doesn't care how much he spends, doesn't care what it costs. He's a terrific owner. He's got no ego, just straightforward. And listen, if this is what you have to do and this is what's going to make it work, then let's do it. And that's the owner. But you can't tell me Jerry Jones doesn't want to try it, but he's such an idiot. Nice guy, but an idiot as far as putting a team together. You can't tell me with all the money that he makes that he wouldn't want to try to do it to try to win a Super Bowl. And there's other people trying to do it. It's not just against the Eagles. It's the spirit. Why have a salary cap if you can beat the system? You know, all the NFL cares about is everybody trying to be on an equal level. That's all they care about. That's why that's why they do what they do. And that's why the football isn't as good quality wise, because they want everybody they want all this parity, and they make it tougher schedules for certain teams. They do all these things. Everybody that thinks the commissioner is against the Eagles, the commissioner's just trying to do what the model of the league is. And that's try to keep as much parity as you can and not circumvent the rule, or maybe that's a strong way to say it. Just, in the spirit of the rule, just play by the spirit of the rule. So, I mean, I don't care.
Here's the only thing I would say to that, though, is that when you have other owners, like you say, other owners they want to do it this way, Howard. They want to go back end, and they want to go to the back end of that stuff, and they want to pay players on the back end, where Jeffrey Lurie, and if I'm an Eagle guy or I'm a free agent, what I want to do is this guy's going to give me money up front. Money in the bank is better than money promised. And to me, if I'm a kid that's out there or a potential free agent, that's enticing for me to want to go to Philly. That's like a web that guy's going to give me more money up front. I may make less on the back end, but those are phony years anyway in people's contracts. That is where I think that you have other teams going, wait a minute here. He's manipulating and having a place where people, again, the owner has to pay money up front. I don't want to pay money if I'm up front, if I'm Mark Davis or if I'm Mike Brown. Jeffrey Lurie's willing to do that, and I think that may be an ego thing again, where he wants to win. These other guys
but
want to win.
Here's the issue. The issue is they're signing players to 5-year contracts knowing they won't play the last couple of years.
Correct.
But they give them the money up front, so then the money collapses. He's still paying he's paying more money because he's paying for players that aren't there. So he's paying for players that aren't there, but he doesn't care. And Andrew Brent made this point too, and it's the truth. If you draft well, and you know that you're going to get eaten up by dead cap money at the end.
Player development, too.
Right. You got to draft well and develop the players. And the Eagles have done a good job of that. They've made some mistakes, like everybody makes mistakes. But if you do that, then it doesn't hurt you at the end. You're still paying. It's dead cap money, but it doesn't matter. If they didn't draft well, it would matter. But they are drafting and developing players. So these people that think the commissioner is out to get the Eagles, I'm sure he gets along with Jeffrey Lurie extremely well. Yeah. There's a lot of owners. I'm sure he doesn't like Jerry Jones pushing him around as much as he does, but Jerry Jones has so much power. Jeffrey Lurie doesn't he just tries to do what's best for his team. He had this big speech about the tush push. That's okay. He's trying to fight for his team, and about paying it, I'm sure it'll be addressed, and I'm sure there'll be some things. The player, I don't know how they can, if they want to try to fix it somewhat, I don't know how they can do it, because the player agreement lasts many more years. I don't know how you can change the cap.
And if I'm a player, Howard, and I'm an agent, I don't want those void years gone.
No.
I mean, those void years allow me to get a signing bonus. The reason those signing bonuses can be deferred out, that's how you get these $100 million. And when you're the top end guys, that's how you get those $100 million guaranteed bonuses, is because you can defer that money out and you can push that out 2-3 years. So I want those voidable years. For you to get that by the CBA, like you say, where's the NFL Players Association? They got to drop a pair and show me they got a pair to fight that, because the owners, do you not agree though, Howard? The owners have to control salary somehow. And to me, when you're paying Dak Prescott $60 million or Trevor Lawrence $55 million, you're paying exorbitant amount of money for good players or decent players. You're not paying for exceptional players. The owners, the model's going up, isn't it? The model of the NFL ratings are going through the roof. But I'm sitting around paying guys like Bryce Huff. I'm paying that guy $51 million, and he's a one-dimensional guy.
I know. So that was one of their mistakes. Devin White was a mistake. It's just
Was James Bradbury a mistake?
At the time he wasn't, and you knew you tried to squeeze as much as you could out of him. It'd be interesting to see what they do with Davis, because I think after this year he'll be eligible sometime this year for another contract. He stepped up his game, but he and Jalen Carter on that defensive line, Davis and Carter are really really important for that defensive line. And then they got the ends will be there. There's going to be somebody.
Yeah, but Reid Blankenship are you going to let Reid go into the 2025 season, knowing that at the end of it, he's a free agent? I mean, does that guy look like a $10 million a year safety to you? Are you, especially with what they said today, where you went like this? You heard Vic say this: "Hey, we're going to play Cooper in base at safety." Okay, well, that means they're moving him out of nickel. They want him on the field for the entire time instead of just being 69% of the time. You want him on the field all the time. All right. When you see Reid Blankenship, I don't. I think that guy's replaceable. I'm not paying that guy $10 million. They just drafted a guy in the second round from Texas, Makuba. I mean,
but you got to look at this. The cap's going to go up.
18% every year.
What's $10 million? What's $10 million? And Reid Blankenship is a really good guy to have in the locker room. Sometimes you need that because he connects with a lot of the players. He still does a good job. Is he a great player? No, but he's a good player. And he might sign for a little bit less to stay with the Eagles because he and Cooper DeJean are tied at the hip, and he's a really good guy to have in the locker room. And sometimes that's really important. You can't have a bunch of jerks in the locker room, and there are jerks in the locker room. But when teams make mistakes, I mean, when Jerry Jones signed Dak Prescott, that might have been one of the worst contracts in the last 10 years. He's never going to win. Never. He's never going to win. He's not a winner. And the Cowboys fans can whine all they want. He had a lot of players around him, not this last year, but I think the year before, and he can't win. He's not a winner. And you made a mistake, and now you're stuck with it because now they don't have another quarterback. So you got to get another quarterback to pay him that kind of money. So I'm not worried about Reid Blankenship. I think the Eagles always find a way to figure it out, but you can't keep everybody, and that's the case. But $10 million nowadays, let's say he takes, he does one of those deals where he gets dummy money at the end, just to keep him around. But I think he's important to the team. Not a great player, but a good player, and he's important.
Last question to you: do you think with all the time man of the year, you got Cooper DeJean hanging out in Wildwood, hanging out with the honeys in the bar. You got guys doing commencement speeches. I mean, the thrills, Howard, of being a champion. You get to hang out with the honeys at the Met. You get to do all that stuff. Now you're a big hero. Very un-Philly-like, I might add. All these psycho things that they're doing. You think there's too many distractions?
I've seen teams that let the distractions get to them. We don't know until this year. It's going to be tougher. Teams are going to come after them. Detroit, if they didn't have injuries, I still think the Eagles were a better team. But if they didn't have injuries, who knows what would happen to them? Right. I believe the Eagles play them here this year.
They do.
So they play them in Philadelphia, which is an advantage for the Eagles. So I don't know if they're all caught up in it. I've seen it happen to a team, but I have to go back many years. I always think of the Phillies. But that was in 1980. They were so caught up in themselves and all the things they were doing in the offseason. And the 81 was a screwed up season because then you had the strike and all the other nonsense. But there are teams that just kind of get caught up. And who they were, but you got to have the right players though. Like Golden State, they had the right players there in basketball. And there's teams that have the right. Kansas City had the right players, but they had the right coach that made sure they stayed in line. And I think Nick Sirianni is that guy. Hey, listen, you don't win on the past. You win on what you're going to do in the future. So we'll see if they get all caught up in it. They're still going to work hard, but and they didn't have any injuries. That's another thing. They didn't really have any injuries. So you have to look at that. But I don't know. I don't know if they're too caught up in it. They're having a good time. There's nothing wrong with having a good time. The Madden curse, all that nonsense. But Saquon Barkley had a year that I don't know that he can duplicate that year again. I mean, how are you going to duplicate 2,000 yards 2 years in a row? So I don't know that he can do that again. And he's got to stay healthy. Now he's playing on a grass rather than that turf that they played on in New York, and that may have contributed to it. But I don't know if the young guys can handle all the notoriety that they've gotten. But they're still a very, very good team. Very
Howard,
good team.
I would like to sneak something in on you here because you're the godfather of LaFraud. When you say LaFraud, I'm going to go off topic here, but
you know what's amazing? I'm going to tell you a story about that word. Frank Caliendo, who we all know who Frank is. And I had him on the show, and he revealed this to me when I had him on the show, just as kind of doing all his voices. I was at a function with him at a Super Bowl, and he was with his son. And I called somebody a fraud. And then he pointed out, that guy's a fraud. That guy's a fraud. He says, my son uses that word all the time. It's easy to identify, in my opinion, easy to identify frauds.
It sure is, because they're not genuine.
No.
I mean, you
were going to ask me about LaFraud James, weren't you?
Let me throw this at you here. So I've over the years become friends with Horace Grant, and I asked him, the debate was like just a stupid thing, the old, sports talk. LeBron versus Michael. And he goes, well, it's very simple.
Not even close.
Michael Jordan played in a system that allowed him to be great, and he had guardrails. I go, what do you mean by that? He goes, well, you think there's any coincidence that Phil Jackson with the triangle, and then what happened when he went to Los Angeles, the triangle? Steve Kerr, you think the championships in Golden State had anything to do with the triangle that they ran there from the point with Steph the same way? Those things all show you the type of success that everybody that was in that triangle, wherever it went, it showed you that teams had success with it. He was in LA with it. He won with Kobe and Shaq. He was up in Chicago with Jordan. Jordan had the triangle with Tex Winter putting it where the point guard instead of the center. Look at Golden State. As I said, all of those places, Steve Kerr, all champions. LeBron never played in a system ever. So how could you ever say that guy was ever going to be a champion that way?
LeBron chose his own teams. It's like going to the schoolyard and, 1, 2, 3, shoot.
Their life not being on superstar teams.
You know what? He decided he put together his own teams most of the time. And, I can't identify him as one of the all-time champions. Michael Jordan played 9 straight seasons and played every game, regular season and playoffs. Nobody will ever do that again. And LaFraud James, he named himself the king. When you give yourself your own nickname, you're a fraud. You're a fraud. King James. Nobody named you king. You named yourself king. And he always is looking for attention. Some sport and ESPN, the bobbleheads that they are at ESPN, they always, LeBron James put something up on Twitter or social media, and they always run his quote because he knows he's going to get attention outside of the game. And now he's only playing to build up numbers because nobody's going to get more points than he is. He plays no defense. And here's another thing. I don't think he really, and I'm trying to think of all the teams, he made players on his team better. Michael Jordan played with no centers, and he made them better. Scottie Pippen is a great player, but Scottie may not agree with this, but he made Scottie Pippen a better player. Stars are stars because they make players on their team better. Tell me one player that LeFraud James made better on his teams. Tell me one player.
I completely agree. And on top of that, he drove the ratings of the sport down. I mean, Jordan elevated the game.
Oh,
I mean,
unbelievable.
Don't you? I mean, Iverson was must-watch television more so than what LeBron was. I mean, look, he's had a longevity career that is second to none in that sport, and there is no question. But when I look at him, do I see Magic Johnson or do I see
no?
Do I see Magic and Larry and Michael Jordan or Kareem? I don't see that.
No, he's not. He just doesn't make players on his team better. He's not. I don't think he's in the top 5 all time. I don't think he's in the top 5. People compare him to Jordan. Not even close. It's not even close. It's a joke when people put him in the same class as Michael Jordan. And the problem is the people that do that have never seen Michael Jordan. I used to have arguments with Torrey Smith, the wide receiver for the Eagles at one time. Oh yeah, LeBron's better than Michael. I said, no, he's not. Did you ever see Michael? No, I didn't. Okay, you're out of this discussion. Done. Gone. Get out of here. So it just, you had to see him, and I'm lucky enough to have seen both of them. And I've seen a lot of players, and there's players that are certainly better than LeFraud beyond Michael Jordan.
Absolutely. How can folks find you? Howard, I do all the time. I saw that Andrew Brandt episode, and it was absolutely great. He broke it down, and he was like, hey, those void years is something to keep an eye on for the owners when they get to their next owners meetings.
You know what? I always seem to learn something on the podcast. I had Irving Frier on last week. I guess it was Saturday. I do the podcast. He was great. Live 7:30 on Wednesday and live 8 o'clock on Saturday. But obviously on a podcast, you can see it forever. But I learned something from Irving Frier. He was the first player taken in the 84 draft, which is amazing that a wide receiver. And then what he told me, he says, I didn't even play wide receiver my last year at Nebraska. I was a wingback.
Yeah.
He says, I might have touched the ball 4 times a game.
Hey,
and he was the first player taken in the draft.
Do me a favor the next time you ask him.
I'll see him Thursday.
Ask him this. In 1983, he played us for the national championship, and that Nebraska team was supposed to be the greatest team of all time. We were 11-point underdogs at the Orange Bowl. They went for the tie. They didn't go for the tie at the end of the game. They went for 2 points, and they lost to us 31-30. Ask him if they had kicked that field goal, they would have probably been named the national champion. If he ever regrets that, because I've heard him say that's his most disappointing loss in his entire career, was that team would have been considered one of the greatest college football teams of all time under Coach Osborne. They went like, hey, Howard, they scored with seconds left. They went, if they kick it, they go 12-0-1, and we don't win it. Instead, Tom Osborne had the onions to go for the 2, and they missed it. We win our first national title, really set our program up. And I remember seeing Frier's face go, and I remember he became the number 1 overall pick in the draft, that next draft in April.
I know. Can you imagine that? He didn't even play wide receiver. It was, but his 40 time was really, really good. And that probably sold people on those things. I got Mike Quick on Wednesday night.
Great.
And Mike, he was, I started looking it up. He was the 20th player taken in the draft. And there's no wide receiver. There was 4, including Dick Vermeil wanted Perry Tuttle out of Clemson. And he was taking the pick before Quick. And Dick was mad. And then he took Quick, who turned out to be great. It's just, but there were 4 wide receivers taken before him in the first round. And none of them were as good as Mike Quick.
No way.
It's amazing how these things happen.
Mike's a borderline, for his era, Hall of Fame guy. I mean, he's a borderline.
He had 5 straight years he led the league in catches.
Right. I think he came out of NC State, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, NC State. That is correct.
And he for his era, clearly one of the absolutely best wide receivers of all time. Howard, I always check out your show. I think it's truly one of the best out there. So informative also because, between you and Angelo, I'm learning the ropes a little bit about.
What do you learn from Angelo? What do you learn from Angelo? What do you learn from Angelo?
Well, I learned how he can't stand Andy Reid, and you glaze Andy Reid, and you love. He hates. He thinks he's the biggest.
He can't get off. He can't get off.
He will not let loose. He hates Nick Sirianni too. He can't. He thinks Nick Sirianni's the biggest puppet going. He thinks
just because he's got emotion and he won't get off that horse. Not that he's ever ridden a horse. That's the other thing. When you see Angelo, I want to put Angelo on a horse and see it'll take about 1.5 seconds to throw him off that horse.
It's such polar opposite. No wonder that station at one time was sensational. Thank you so much, Howard.
Not anymore.
I know it, Howard. I mean, I tuned on, not to take too many shots at anybody. I tuned on and I thought there was like a doctor and like a psychiatrist going, help me out here, AJ. How you feeling? I'm like, what do I care how he feels?
Oh my gosh.
Hey, thank you so much, Howard. I appreciate it. We'll always check you out, my friend.
All right, take care. You have a great day and a better day tomorrow.
You got it. That is our friend Howard Eskin. God dang, that's awesome. Yes, sir, man. That's exactly how. Make sure you check out his podcast. I got that. By the way, I told you guys, I listened to his podcast when he had Andrew Brandt on. And Andrew Brandt's like, this thing might be an issue with these voidable years. And that was something that kind of caught me. And then I heard, and then I watched the commissioner start to make some comments. He didn't really say Eagles, but he was referring to those dudes. And so Monday I will have, this is always great because we go back and forth. I'll do this. I had Eskin on. How much did he glaze over Andy Reid? I go, well, no, he said he's the greatest coach in the history of the National Football League. And that always ticks off Angelo. And now he's not. That guy, I talked to him for 20 years. He just couldn't say it. And I'm going like, wait a minute. Howard says, I feel like I'm the guy in the middle. Guys, great stuff. Do me a favor. Please hit the like button. Our great friends. By the way, John Morgan's going to join us at the bottom of the hour, the legendary John Morgan. He will join us at the bottom of the hour. The number one injury law firm in America is Morgan & Morgan. If you're ever injured, folks, do me a favor. Check these guys out. And the reason you should check them out is because why? They win. Over $30 billion, like I said, in recovery. This is what makes them the number one injury law firm in all of America. Family here in Pennsylvania got $26 million in recovery when an insurance company came in and said, hey, wait a minute here. We want to give you $650,000 in a settlement. No way. Morgan & Morgan went out, got their attorneys. Clancy Boland, the crime fighter in Philadelphia, will tell you all the time, that's how we do business here. Down in Florida, family got $12 million in recovery. That is exactly why they do great things for families across the country, is getting proper settlements for families. They don't get paid, okay, unless they win. Go to forthepeople.com/big sales or pound law 529. That's FORthepeople.com/big sales or pound law 529. And do me a favor, you tell them Big Sales sent you.
This is Eric,